Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Coronavirus has started a new trend, and that trend continues unabated, and there's no likelihood that it's ever going to end. Companies like Google and Microsoft have already declared that this trend would continue, at least for 1 year more. And it's quite possible that it might become a permanent feature of our routine. This trend is work from home. No, work from home is something not novel or new. People have been working from home from times immemorial. And we know that most of the senior executives, CEOs, the ministers, they have an office at home as well. It was the common practice to see that at the end of the day, the files would be loaded into the car and carried home for the boss to look at them and take decisions. However, now it has become generic and everybody practically works from home, except in the retail sector, but even there, online ordering, Flipkarts, Amazons, and myriads of online shopping experiences are there. So it's becoming a regular feature of the economic activity, and people sometimes go gaga over that, little knowing that there's a downside also, and that downside is quite dangerous. It spoils the social fabric of the society. I do not deny that working from home has a lot many benefits. Benefits to the individual, benefits to society. You save on infrastructure costs, traveling costs. And I've seen people working at home in their pajamas, just dressing up and showing. There was a time when dressing up was a part of the daily ritual. That's gone. But that's a minor thing. However, we have seen a very, very strange phenomena, and that's the increase in domestic violence. Domestic violence in many countries has increased by 600%. 600% increase is quite something which cannot be sneezed, that cannot be bypassed. Secondly, depression. The mental health of the people is suffering. The social interactivity having gone away. The sport bases having gone away. And then the mixing of the home work many times converts working from home to work at home. And that can inhibit productivity. I do not deny that I have seen cases, and many cases, where people who are working from home work much more than they were working in the office. That barrier between the home and office having been broken, people work from home much before the office time starts and keep on working till late at night. Is it good? Does it contribute to the balance? No, it doesn't. As a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal recently talked to the people, and those people who are working from home say that the logistic channels are making projects take longer time. Hiring and onboard training new hires is tougher, and some employers say that workers are seeming to be less connected. Naturally, how can they be connected? You are talking impersonally on the phone. Even if you are using the video conferencing facility, it lacks a human touch. As a matter of fact, one senior executive of an IT industry warned that remote work would result in increased unemployment, and fear-driven productivity is not sustainable. Let's be very clear. Now people work because they fear that if they don't work, they don't give results, they'll be sacked. As a matter, fear is that also innovation will suffer where there's a potential face-to-face interaction. Innovation is always a result of interaction. It's never something which can take place in a vacuum. Inventions, yes. Innovation, no. That's very clear. Both are starting with I. But as far as the invention is concerned, it's individual and it requires a certain discipline of mind and some cutting away from the social intercourse. Innovation is more of a social interactive result. So the spontaneous face-to-face interactions which take place result in innovation. That's why the famous Indian jugaad is there. Somebody comes to your house, you have a problem, and lo, all of a sudden a person from whom you least expect comes up with a suggestion. I know my wife always comes up when we are discussing something with those ideas. We are in a group meeting and she comes up with people are stunned. And she is known to be the master of innovation. 4 months have already passed since corporate world is working from home, and cracks are now emerging. As I said earlier, projects take longer time, collaboration is becoming harder, and training new workers is a pain in the neck. Agreed that the employees have proved that they can do their work effectively from home. But the CEOs who have to take a helicopter view do not like that. They don't want to stay remote long term once the pandemic passes. But then would they continue? There is another thing which happens that the remote work reshapes the workforce. The shift to a largely remote workforce may significantly alter wages. Naturally, you are not coming to the office, you don't have to dress appropriately, you don't have to travel, there is no expenditure on gas, you are saving time. So why should you get the same salary? So the wages would be altered, career paths would be altered, and companies would operate in coming years in a different manner. I fully agree that many workers would see more flexibility and higher disposable income, quite possible, because of saving. But it also means a disaster for the low skilled labor. The low skilled labor, when they are working from home, the CEOs and the management can always say, well, they are not required. Let this work be merged with another work. So the skilled labor would suffer either by the wages going down or by getting a pink slip. So there is a lack of job security. Even skilled workers would find it more challenging to band together on the issues of pay and working conditions. So goodbye to the trade unions. The hallmark of capitalism was collective bargaining. Now, if you are not collected, how can you be collective? It's as simple as that. So this is a boon to the management, but a disaster for the labor. And that's a negative thing. You see, the so-called fully distributed companies, where everyone works remotely, often pay employees somewhat less than they can earn in the most expensive metropolitan cities, but more than they would make elsewhere. Now, suppose you are working from home in from Toronto or New York or Delhi or Mumbai or London, the big metros where the cost of living is much higher. Naturally, you get a higher salary. But what prohibits you to moving to the suburb? Since you're working remotely. The managements are going to say, well, since you have moved to suburb and you're not working in a metropolitan, your salary should be at par with the people in that area. So the salaries have to be reduced. And since in one organization, the salaries cannot be unequal between the same level, whether you're working at X place or Y place. So the lowest common denominator will come into effect and the salaries will be reduced accordingly. There's a logic in that because you have the freedom to work from home, you're saving money. You can easily move to a suburb, you can move to a village, you can move to countryside and save a sizable. The result would be another disaster which nobody has thought of, the fall in the real estate prices. If the real estate goes high in the metropolitan because of the demand and the desire of the people to be in the metros, once that desire is not there and the people want to move to the less polluted, less cumbersome areas where maybe they don't need a vehicle at all, then what do? Get less salary. So the water flows to keeps it level at the lowest one, doesn't have the highest. So even the people who are going to work in the metropolitan would suffer. Now, reducing hiring of the affluent workers in the expensive areas would mean fewer bidders for the real estate, as I said earlier. When real estate falls down, all the people connected with the real estate, the agents, the brokers, the developers, they lose. And when they lose, it's a huge number. The spin-off effect would be there, and their buying power will come less. They will buy less. When they buy less, the production would suffer, so the economy would start going down. So one thing that is work from home would result in a possible recessionary activity. And that would show a real danger in the long run. I don't know why the people are not recognizing this. That once this trend starts and becomes established, it's going to be different. And it can go further. The remote companies, because they are set up to allow work efficiently on their own, could well be positioned to use contractors and other workers who are not employees. So why do I need to hire full-time people and give them provident funds, gratuities, bonuses? I'll hire either independent contractors or freelancers. My expenses would come down even if I had to pay a freelancer more, which I don't have to. I don't have to pay for the insurance for the employee. I don't have to pay the gratuity. I don't have to pay for the provident fund. I'm saving all the way. So who suffers? The people are going to suffer. So if you know how have to have remote full-time employees, it's much easier to have remote on-demand people from a freelancing platform. For example, Upwork has shown that there is 350% increase in their business because they are hiring now the freelancers and supplying it to the remote workers. So the lean companies are becoming leaner and meaner. As a matter of fact, the freelancing would increase. And then another factor, when the freelancing increases, the youngsters would not get the job easily because the hirer of the freelancers and the contractors always want experienced people. So the sound management would be that the companies with physical offices did not simply do it because they could afford to be sloppy. And the ease of working as a freelancer can be a boon to many skilled workers, but would be absolute disaster for the low skilled workers. Because the contractor, the freelance supplier will reduce wages. There are more freelancers available. Even the retired hand would be there. And there would be more supply than demand. It will reduce wages, increase insecurity, and ultimately an economic disaster. So the real estate will fall down, the regular workers will fall down, then the mental health, people working in a cluster place and home all the time without any exposure would have mental health issues. The domestic violence cases, as I already said, have increased 600%. They might increase more. So these downsides, which are emerging slowly, have to be taken into consideration. And we have got to realize that working from home, WFH, is not an unmitigated blessing. People at present are thinking it's great, but it's not. And my fear is that WFH, working from home, might still remain WFH, but the meaning might be working from hell. Choice is difficult, but ultimately, this is going to be it's basically a recipe for economic disaster to happen. And the sooner we realize it, the better it would be. Thank you.